Welcome to Magic Movie Recap. This movie is about the story of a retiring assassin. The film begins by showing a luxurious home, located in an unknown location in Chile. Michael Green, the owner of the mansion, and a hitman who is about to retire. Michael was having fun with Cindy, a beautiful woman with plump body. Unfortunately to Michael, a sniper known as Facundo was preparing to fire a bullet from a location not far from his residence. Not only the sniper, but several armed killers are also infiltrating. Michael is distracted by Cindy, as Facundo takes a shot at Michael. The intruders instantly surrounded Michael, knocking him down. It turns out that Facundo and the other intruders, including Cindy, are a specialist assassin team, sent to kill Michael because he's getting old. In the next scene shows a man named Duncan Vizla, or popularly known as, the Black Kaiser. Just like Michael, Duncan is a hitman, who is also about to retire soon. Michael and Duncan are employees of an assassin organization called Damocles. Duncan visited a doctor to check his health condition. He then met an old man who worked as an accountant, who had been managing his assets. He told Duncan that he would be officially retiring in the next 14 days, or on his 50th birthday. By making huge contributions to his company retirement fund, he is owed over $8 million upon his retirement day. Duncan then receives a call from Vivian, who asks him to meet her somewhere immediately. Vivian is also a hitman, but she mostly acts as a manager, who manages the division of missions for the assassins who work for Damocles. Vivian told him that their employer, Mr. Blood, is giving him a final assassination mission before he officially retires from his job. Duncan is tasked to eliminate a Mexican cartel. Vivian assures that Duncan will receive an amount of $1 million to encourage him on his final mission. Duncan, who had already decided to retire early, ignored his employer's assignments, and left Vivian. Vivian reported Duncan's refusal to Mr. Blood, who plans to sell the company, and is inflating its value by killing its retiring assassins, in order to acquire all of their retirement funds, through a clause in their contract. Because of greediness, Mr. Blood tells Vivian that he had absolutely no intention of paying the pensions of the assassins who had retired, or whose contracts had expired, and decided to kill them all. Aside that, Duncan will get the largest pension fund, compared to the others. Mr. Blood intentionally gives Duncan a final mission and has prepared a plan to trap him. Vivian advised Mr. Blood to just pay Duncan's pension, according to the contract, and not get into trouble with him, because Duncan Vizla is a very dangerous person. But Mr. Blood ignores and carries out his plan. Mr. Blood then tells Vivian to lure Duncan, that he will accept the final mission by increasing the reward to $2 million, half of which is paid up front. Duncan still refused and hung up on Vivian. But he quietly began to investigate everything related to his target this time. Duncan then moves to Belarus to kill his target, but he finds a file containing information about him, and soon gets to know that the mission was set up to have him killed. After eliminating the target, Duncan then takes a picture of the target's corpse. He calls Vivian, telling her that he will carry out the mission, and asking Vivian to transfer $1 million as a down payment. Vivian, who is happy that Duncan had finally fallen into their trap, immediately sent the advance to Duncan's personal account. After getting the down payment, Duncan then sent a photo of the body of the target to Vivian and demanded $1 million in payment. Duncan threatened to eliminate Vivian if she doesn't pay the full payment within 24 hours. Vivian is shocked, and then met Mr. Blood and reported that Duncan had carried out his last mission without any problems, and was asking for the reward. Literally, Mr. Blood's intention to trap and kill Duncan in Belarus was a flop, as Duncan could easily kill his target without much effort. Vivian again advised him to immediately pay the full payment, and the pension due to Duncan, because the Black Kaiser would not just stand still, and instead turn to attack them. But the greedy Mr. Blood insists on not paying Duncan's pension, and instead assigns a team of specialist assassins to eliminate the legendary Black Kaiser. After his mission, Duncan goes back to his home in a remote town in Montana, where he is next door to a girl named Camille, who also lives alone, just like him. Duncan had been watching Camille all this time. Living in a rural area, Duncan often meets Camille at the convenience store and restaurants. He sees that Camille always seemed troubled, since she was going through the lowest times of her life. As time goes on, Duncan gradually developed a relationship with Camille, and often spent time together chatting. Duncan also often assists Camille, even buying her a gun, and trying to teach her how to shoot, but she seems disturbed by the weapon, because of her painful past. One day, Camille discloses that she has been depressed since she was 13. At which time a man had destroyed her life, by murdering her family. She struggled to get up from the slum, and tried to calm herself down, by moving to a remote area. But she is always haunted by her past, which is very painful. Even she intended to kill the man who had destroyed her life. After listening to Camille's story, Duncan could clearly see the anger and vengeance that is generated from Camille's eyes, when she told about the man who had killed her family. A specialist assassin team consisting of Cindy, Facundo, Hilda, Kurt and Alexei tries to find the location of Duncan, by going to his personal accountant and forcing him to show Duncan's hideout. But since the old man had absolutely no idea where Duncan was currently living, they killed him immediately and searched his office, where they find some real estate owned by Duncan. Cindy and her team immediately went to the address listed one after the other to find Duncan. Not finding Duncan, they immediately murdered the people who lived there, indiscriminately. Lastly, Cindy and her team found an address in Montana, where Duncan often donated an amount of his earnings to a Montana charity. When the specialist hit team arrives in Montana, they locate Duncan, and hurriedly plan to kill him, where Cindy, who is a master charmer, will distract Duncan. Cindy pretended to have a fault in her car, on the appointed day and asked Duncan for assistance, who was about to cross the road. As planned, Duncan crossed the road, stopped to assist Cindy, and allowed the sexy woman to rest at his house. Getting to Duncan's house, Cindy started the action by teasing Duncan, and they then had sex. Meanwhile, Facundo and the other assassins began preparing to attack Duncan. But Duncan manages to dodge Facundo's attack, and the bullet hits Cindy instead. Facundo continues to strike Duncan with bullets, until Duncan finally realizes that Cindy is a sniper's partner, and Duncan hurriedly kills her. After that, Hilda and the others stormed into Duncan's house but couldn't find him. Duncan actually managed to escape from there, and finds Facundo's location, where he immediately killed Facundo. After killing the sniper, Duncan took over his rifle, and attacked Hilda, who is Mr. Blood's girlfriend. Duncan killed Hilda and the assault team, even dodged a sudden attack from one of the assassins, who suddenly appeared behind him. After the attack, Duncan searches for clues about the person who had assigned the assassins to kill him. He found a room key at an inn, not far from his house. When he arrives at the location, he finds a drunken woman named Jane, who mistakenly tells him that Camille has been kidnapped. Duncan rushed to Camille's house, and found her nowhere. Mr. Blood is furious when he realizes that his girlfriend, Hilda, has been killed by Duncan, and all the members of the assassin specialist team. Vivian just smirked and said she had warned about this beforehand. After all, Duncan was the best assassin in the world, so that he wouldn't be eliminated by a team of inexperienced assassin specialists like Hilda and her team. Duncan then seeks help from his old friend, Porter, a retired assassin, to find Camille's location. Porter reveals to Duncan that since Mr. Blood runs Damocles, a hitman has never survived past their retirement, because he would do anything to get rid of them all because he was too greedy to give his employees pensions. But, unexpectedly, Porter betrayed Duncan by drugging him into unconsciousness. He turned out to have conspired with Mr. Blood to get some money, by handing over Duncan. Not long after, Duncan woke up in Mr. Blood, in which he was chained on the spot, and tortured for 3 days by Mr. Blood himself, for murdering Hilda. Mr. Blood then tells Duncan that Camille will soon be mad, and shows Camille's final state that looks pathetic. Meanwhile, Camille is kept in a drug-induced incoherent state by Jane. Mr. Blood stabs Duncan with a slim knife, and part of the blade snaps off on Duncan's titanium hip replacement. He then slashes Duncan's face and stabs him in the left eye. Overnight, Duncan uses the knife shard to pick the locks on his manacles, and by morning, he escapes the mansion, eliminating many of Mr. Blood's men. Immediately after that, Duncan traveled and visited a woman named Jasmine, one of his old friends, who helped him treat his wounds, and gives him some advanced weapons. After his condition recovered, Duncan then called Vivian and offered himself in exchange for Camille. Vivian accepted the offer, but on Mr. Blood's intentions, she double-crosses Duncan and sends a hit squad, accompanied by herself. Duncan gives Vivian a chance to stay out, but she refuses, and he uses remote sentries to kill the entire force, and leaves a wounded Vivian on her own. Mr. Blood, who saw everything from a surveillance camera, was frightened and ordered all his men to increase security at his residence. Duncan, fully knowing that Mr. Blood locks Camille in his house, he rushes back to Mr. Blood, where Blood's remaining henchmen decided to run away, rather than face Duncan Vizla, the Black Kaiser. Mr. Blood waits for Duncan alone but is decapitated. Duncan saves Camille and goes back to Montana, where he treats her. Duncan wakes up one morning, he finds a newspaper clipping about a family murder, many years ago. He recognized as a hit that he, himself, carried out, due to bad intel, which has haunted him ever since. The only survivor of the family massacre is a little girl, who turns out to be Camille. Behind him, Camille was standing with a gun pointed at Duncan, where she said that the man who had murdered her family, and destroyed her life was Duncan. Duncan explains what happened to Camille before, apologizing and telling her to close her mind, and kill him. Duncan knows that Camille has hatred against him, and he has resigned if Camille kills him so she can be free from all the painful things she felt, after Duncan murdered her family. Camille pulled the trigger, but actually the shot didn't hit Duncan. Camille pardons Duncan, realizing that Duncan eliminated her family on someone's orders. And also Duncan actually took care of her, through his donations. Camille then asks Duncan to help her find out who ordered the murder of her family, so she can take revenge on them, and Duncan agrees to help Camille and train her to be a great assassin.